It's okay, it takes time. I know.
Welcome back, everybody. Here we are, season 2, a new episode. Tonight, we go all the way to London and meet our very next guest. For those of you joining us for the very first time, welcome to Strong. We are here to support the youth with real role models. These are people that we meet every single day, and they talk about their life, their journey. It's about sharing our life stories so that we can create global communities to support families, parents, and of course, our youth. Today we meet Jake. Hi, Jake. How are you?
I'm good, Maria. How are you doing?
I'm so well. It's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you too.
I'm so excited to meet you here again. For the guests watching, I remember Jake when he was teeny tiny. Jake's mom and I go back many, many years, and it's such an honor to have him with us today to be sharing his story and his journey. I'm so excited to have you here, Jake.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I'm very, very honored, and it's really, really lovely to see you again. It is.
It's so great. Jake, pick up where we left off, which feels like decades, really.
Mm.
You know, what's it like to be Jake living in London after growing up in the Middle East?
Well, it's if you told young Jake what he'd be doing now, he probably wouldn't believe you. I mean, you lived in such a different life in Dubai, with the weather, with all the beautiful malls and everything. And I feel like when I finally came to England for university, it's almost like reality started, because that's when I became an adult, basically. So it was a massive change. And I've had 3 years of university, which I've seen myself grow more than I've ever grown in my life. And now I'm finally, in London. I've started. It's amazing that I'm here. And it's just, I can't believe it sometimes.
What's it like to be an expat child?
I think, see, I didn't think it was going to be such a difficult task of adjusting. I mean, I am British. I'm 3/4 British. So, and I've, spoke the language all my life. I knew all the TV shows. I went to England every single summer to meet family. So it wasn't like England was, I didn't know what it was. But coming to England for university, it was such a culture shock that I did not expect, and that I was really, really taken aback from, actually. And getting used to just being independent for the first time, it's surprisingly really difficult, despite the fact that you sort of have the tools, but you need to develop them more.
And we see this a lot. I know I saw this with my own daughter, and I see this as an educator. We prepare young people for the academics. We prepare them for, what it was like for us being back in our home countries. And we assume that we give them enough skills, but we hope that they'll be able to land on their feet. And I think this is probably the biggest challenge that young people have. And of course, their guardians and parents are worried about, that are they ready? Are they ready to go? And I know that we'll have guests who live in countries where their children stay in the same country and travel to university. Do you feel that these young people would have more solid ground than you as an expat would have had?
I think, to generalize, yes, obviously there are different circumstances for different people, but from my own experience and from other experiences of other expat kids I know, it is incredibly difficult for them compared to someone, let's say, who's grown up in England their whole lives, because they have despite being 18 years old, 18 is the oldest and youngest age in the whole world. It's like you feel like an adult, but you still need your parents. It's a weird juxtaposition almost. And so having the freedom to be able to hop on a train and go and see your parents and get your washing done and have a nice meal and just chat and be able to release. And also the fact that you can call them at any time, like, you know, you don't have to worry about time zones and going to bed and work. It's a freedom that I think us as expat kids wish we had, in a way, because there were times where I couldn't speak to my parents when I wanted to, because they'd be asleep just because of time zones. They'd have work the next day, and you want to see them. You only see them twice a year. It's difficult. It really does make you feel like you are sometimes quite alone in your university lifestyle. And even though I did have family that were 2 hour and a half train journey away, it's not as simple as that sometimes to go and see them. So yeah, I would say it was quite difficult. I know lots of people who struggle with the same thing.
Okay, Jake, I saw your video. It's called Man Up.
Mm-hmm.
What was that? What's it about, and why did you create it?
Well, at university, we were tasked with making a 15-minute documentary. And I was immediately really excited by this prospect, because I thought I can use this to create something really, really worthwhile, really, really important, and that can help people. And despite the fact that we filmed this documentary in third year, I was planning this out in second year. I wanted to do something around mental health. By that time in second year, I was really struggling. It was probably the worst year in terms of my mental health. And at that point in time, the only people that knew that I was struggling at all was my parents. It was like I was leading a double life. I had different personalities. One that was that I was really like, and the other one that I pretended to be in front of people. And I started to realize, as I got more educated in depression, that I wasn't so alone in thinking like this, and other people thought like me. And from then, all I've wanted to do is help other people and make them realize that what they're feeling isn't just them. They aren't alone in thinking that way. I feel like one of the horrible things of mental illness is it sort of tricks you into thinking you're the only person on the planet who feels this way, and then that stops you from wanting to communicate to other people. So I came up with this idea for Man Up. My documentary was I was going to reveal my depression to the world and to friends that I hope would inspire other people to do the same, communicate, and also raise awareness. So the whole idea of the project was that I would pretend that for our documentary, who I was working with my two friends, that we would be talking to someone that I knew who had depression, and I would leave the filming area and come back, and then I would sit down and then I would start talking about my depression, and we'd get their genuine reactions of them, despite being friends with them for 2 years. They would have no idea that I'd have depression. So we can see it. The audience and people who are feeling depressed can see it and see themselves in it. And then the rest of the documentary is talking about my experiences and how I got help. And I just felt like I wanted to tell a story of someone putting themselves out there and finally telling people how they actually feel, and how positive it was, and just enlighten people and how that can help.
Jake, I was watching it, and obviously because I was connected to your family growing up, and because of my own experience with Danya and losing Danya to mental health, it made me think, why do you feel, or for those of us that are always wondering, is it something we said as parents? Is it something we did? How do we help our children? How do you answer these questions to potentially a parent like me watching?
I think the most important thing for parents and loved ones of people with mental health to know is that it's not anything that you said or did that's the problem, because you love your child unconditionally. How I view depression is almost as like an entity. It's like something that trickles into your brain and tries to take over it, like a some sort of, I don't know, like a virus in a way. And what it does is it slowly over time, at least for me, makes you believe that you are the way that you're feeling is, there's so many different ways of the way that you're feeling. It could be your fault, such and such, but it tries to convince you that no one will understand what you mean and what you're going through. At least that's for me. So I felt like I can communicate to people because they would think that it's that what I'm going through is weird and that I was the only one in the world going through it, despite the fact that so many people out there suffer the same way, but you don't know in those early stages.
How old were you when you realized there was something not right?
Well, I'd gone through this with my therapist. I started to have symptoms of depression when I was 16, I think. Like, yeah, 16, maybe even 15. But no, 16. And I didn't do anything about it until I didn't realize that something was wrong until 19, I think. That's when, because it can take that long to realize, to not understand, not even comprehend what your emotions are. And there was lots of things throughout that time that was impacting me, so I couldn't address my emotions. I feel like there's a stigma around addressing your own emotions because there's so many other things going on. Let's say you've got relationships, you've got friendships, you've got moving to different countries, university, you've got lots of university projects, social life. All those things seem to people to be so much more important than their own health sometimes, and especially mental, because you can't, it's such a complex thing, your mind, and you can't really, it's difficult to address it sometimes. I feel like we put it to the side. Putting it to the side only just makes it worse, and you don't realize. It took me several experiences and real sad moments to understand, well, why on earth am I feeling this way? And there must be something wrong, because I don't feel like anyone else does feel this way.
Jake, what were some of the symptoms that you remember having that somebody on the outside could notice or maybe could identify with?
I think definitely I think exhaustion is one of them. If someone looks notably more tired, it could be the case that they're just battling with something that, and it is like people say depression is a mental health disorder. It is, but it does affect you physically. You get more exhausted, you feel drained. I'd say the loss of hobbies and like base personality traits and just motivation in general, and just and you're being driven. I remember in first year, I sometimes couldn't even get out of bed for a lecture. I just couldn't do it. I'd stopped enjoying films and TV shows. I've stopped enjoying football. I stopped enjoying all those things that I found was me, because I was deep rooted in my own little bubble in a way. And I feel like it's sometimes difficult to look at that. But if you see someone just acting almost in a slower manner and they're just a bit more hidden away from what they're like, sometimes it can be more difficult to spot in maybe a shyer person or a less outward person. But those sort of things, I feel like I can tell if someone's feeling sad, if they're just, well, I'd say that I'm quite a good read of people emotionally. If I can tell that them as who they are is sort of less, then that is a sign that maybe they are struggling in some sort of way with their own mental health.
Jake, I know with mental health, parents are really worried, but they kind of think, well, it won't happen to my child. And I know that
Mm.
you said that, parents It's not about you. It's something that's happening to the young person. What would you say you could offer from your own experience that you know pay attention to these things?
Yeah, I think with parents, they can do a lot by just asking you how I feel almost twice. I feel like people could get away with saying I'm fine once, but they can't get away with saying I'm fine twice. There's almost like a barrier where they think I'm not actually fine, and really focusing on what their facial expression is, the way their eyes move, just the littlest things. Um, for me, I think there's there's simply not enough education in terms of mental health, and I feel like, as you say, parents probably do think, why would my child feel like this? But we don't know why depression. Sometimes I think it is hereditary, but sometimes it just happens to people, and we can't explain it. And even the happiest of children can feel sad.
Jake, I want to narrow in on your story a little more,
Mm-hmm.
because Strong is about sharing our journey, and it's about really tapping into our story, because we know that by sharing these stories, somebody listening is going to relate and
Definitely.
find connection with the guest. When I asked you, who are you, your response was, I don't know who I am if I don't have this. Why is that?
For me, something that I always struggled with, and something that a lot of my first therapy sessions was focused on, was me saying, I want to be back to who I was. When I was most struggling, that was something, when I was in a lot of pain, I kept repeating in my head and to other people, I want to go back to who I was. It became almost some sort of goal, because before I started having symptoms of depression, I would say I was quite a happy-go-lucky, still quite sensitive and emotional kid, but I always wanted to laugh and joke and such. But what I feel like depression does is, it's sort of, the way I see it is, it's sort of like your identity, your personality is an ice sculpture, and the depression is just a radiator that's trying to slowly get it completely gone. It's trying to knock down all your bridges and all your different personality traits, and leave you with nothing. I view it as some sort of sick game or illness that's trying to do this. So when it started to get rid of my interests, my hobbies, my personality, when it stripped me down to the bare bones of me, I didn't know who I was, apart from someone who was just trapped in a cycle of low. And I think that's really, now, as I'm trying to get better, I'm trying to build the pieces back of who I am again. And I get so confused in who I am, because I've never wanted to outly show that I was struggling to people. I never wanted people to worry about me. So I would put on all these different masks and stuff for different people, for employers, for my friends, at university, for lecturers, for anyone. And I'll get confused of who I was, almost what mask I was wearing. And then coming home after a full day of almost acting and being in performance, you're just exhausted. And what's left of an exhausted person is not really much. So I really have found that who are you is meant to be, it's like the simplest and most complex question in the whole world, and I can't view it as simple in a weird way. But what I'm trying to do now is build the pieces back up and go, well, I need to, instead of going, I need to be this old Jake again, I need to go, well, I need to be a new Jake. I need to find who I am again, without anything like depression or anxiety or OCD stopping me from being a someone.
How did your family react when you told them what was going on?
I think it was a slow process because I think there's not enough education in mental health, so people aren't or don't understand that they either think you've got it or they think no you don't. There's not it's difficult to comprehend what another person's going through. We'll never know what another person's going through because there are so many different things going on in everyone's mind. So it's hard for the person, for the child, for example, to articulate what they're feeling, and it's hard for the parent to comprehend. And for me, I didn't tell my parents for a while because I felt guilty. I didn't want them to know what I was feeling. And I think it took some time for them to almost look at it from not a parent's point of view, without the emotion, without the unconditional love, to understand rooted that I was just feeling sad, instead of saying, oh my goodness, my son is feeling sad, if you understand what I mean. So I think after the most influential thing I think that happened was I was doing some therapy in the summer, and I asked my therapist if she could sit down and talk to my parents without me in the room and just educate them on depression and what I was feeling. And coming out after that, it's been amazing. They've both understood so much more and been a lot more sympathetic because they understood what depression actually was. So I feel like if people out there were more educated and sort of understanding, it would be a lot easier for people to tell their parents. And I feel like now my parents are very understanding and very open to how I feel, which makes me feel better in case I feel down. But obviously, in case you haven't suffered from depression, it's quite difficult sometimes to understand. And I could say something and they just won't comprehend, but I'm like, I can't help but feeling this way. And that's completely honest. It's like if I came up to them and said, why, and they had a broken arm, why can't you move your arm 1 centimeter? They go, I can't do it. It hurts too much. Because I've never broken my arm, I can't understand that it hurts, for example. So it's difficult in that aspect.
You said that it feels like a tug of war of emotions to be you. What does that mean?
In a typical day for me, there's so much going on in my own head. It's quite difficult to comprehend. There's so many different things at play, like my depression, my anxiety, my obsessive compulsive disorder, that's trying to dictate my life. And now that I've got a more solid control over it, it is almost like I'm fighting back. It's like it's a constant battle in a way. And it's a tug of war of trying to take control of my life. And it happens all the time, from the simplest of things. From, for example, I have to push someone past on the tube. My anxiety could be going, well, they could get angry at you and then they could be annoyed at you, for example. But then my more rational side of my brain is, well, you need to get off. It's just stop. You can't be worrying about what someone's thinking of you. You're going to be late for work. So it's a tug of war of, I need to do what's right, versus all these mental health illnesses that trying to dictate my life and almost put it towards a path that I don't want. And that happens throughout the whole day, with talking to people, with doing things, just general what I think of attitude. And it does feel like a fight sometimes. Some days you're winning, some days you're losing. It all depends on a million different things. How much sleep you got? Have you had a good start of the day? What you've eaten? There's so many different things that come to play. But I think it's important that over time to realize that in the end, you're going to be the one with the sharper weapons at the end. You're going to be the one with the most people. It is a fight that seems impossible at the start, but you do get support over time. And I think that's what people struggle with understanding, that over time, depression will become weaker, but it's just how you deal with it when it's at its strongest is the most challenging.
Who would you say has been your go-to person?
I would say it definitely has changed over time. I think when I was very confused about things, it was definitely my parents because I knew I could trust them with anything. I felt like I couldn't really go to my friends at that point because they had no idea. And then I think it's been my parents the whole time. I've been able to talk to them about things most of the time, but sometimes when it's a bit too much, I feel like I can't. Um, I had this therapist called Emma Disney who I call a lifesaver, and I mean that in the most literal sense because before I saw her, I was struggling so much, and then I saw her, and it was the first time I ever had proper therapy. I'd been trying for a year prior, but 2 years prior, but it wasn't. It's difficult to do it in the NHS in public. It's very difficult, um, and she just helped me in a way that I don't think I could ever repay. She helped me so much, and she really became my go-to person for that whole. I saw her for a summer in I think it was 2018, and she just changed my life, and she was really my go-to person from then. Um, and then it's back to being my parents, and now that my documentary's come out, my friends have been an amazing source to be able to talk to because they watch the documentary and they ask me questions and they're genuinely interested in what I'm feeling and they care. And I think that's what depression does. It makes you feel like people don't necessarily care. But now I know that they do because I've seen their reaction. And I now know that I can talk to my friends about things. And knowing that I've got people around me that are understanding, that care about what I feel is really comforting.
What are you most afraid of now, Jake?
Um, I would say most afraid of failure. I think that's a big um, thing in my life that I've struggled and really kickstarted my depression. Um, when I'd say one of the first things that attributed to my depression was the fact that I was failing in sixth form and I wasn't doing very well, and I almost didn't go to university because I wasn't doing very well. And the teacher's words started forming, like changing from, you are failing and you are not doing very well, to literally they could be saying the nicest thing, but my brain would just translate into you're a failure. And it was so impactful and so scary. And I would say it still haunts me, the idea of not doing well for it. And my scariest thing is just waiting for another traumatic experience to come in and just throw me back to the deep end. So I'd say it's failure and life throwing me another curveball that could send me over the edge again. I can Some curveballs I could deflect, but some are just too intense, and that's scary. And growing up as a kid, you don't realize how challenging and non-Edenic life is. It's not a fairy tale, unfortunately, but that's the life of a kid. And I think growing up, that's one of the most shocking things I had to realize. I was always a kid with a big imagination, but simply knowing that life is so complex is scary, and not knowing what the future is and what's coming around the corner. I feel like that is something I'm scared of just what could be happening next.
What would you say, Jake, for, Strong season 2 is about bringing boys and men to the platform. We've
Mm.
spoken to many, many women and many young girls about their experiences. What's it like to be male when you feel like failure is a possibility?
I think men find it, and this is one of the focus of my documentary, men and mental health. I feel there's some strange thing in society that's built up over 100 years that men can't be vulnerable, and we can't be vulnerable to other men. We can't even talk about it to even the people closest to us. And showing any an emotion and sensitivity is seen as some sort of weakness, and is seen as some sort of failure, and admitting to failure is some sort of weakness. But it's just a basic human response, and probably most men out there are sensitive, but we don't let ourselves do it because for some reason it's seen as weak. You know, all of my friends have seen me cry. I don't know how many guys out there can say that that's the case. They'll hide their emotions from everyone.
Would you say that you were more able to show your vulnerability after you shared what you were feeling?
I
Because
think,
you talked about wearing the mask through the day for the different people in your life. At that time when you were wearing all these masks, were you showing, or did you feel that you could be male and show vulnerability?
no, I thought I couldn't talk to anyone. At that point, I didn't tell a single soul during the time when I needed to most that I was struggling.
And do you think that was because of depression or because you were male, or was it a mix of the two?
I think it's definitely a mix of the two. I think it's ever since I feel like with my friends and with most male friends, the topic at hand is never normally one's emotions. It never really comes across, especially with young men. So I never felt I had, even if there was the opportunity arisen to talk about one's emotions, I never felt I would. It's definitely a mixture of the two because it's almost like we've been silently brought up to be silent. And thankfully now that I've shared my documentary, me and my friends have been more connected than ever in our emotions, and we're able to talk to each other about these things, and it feels liberating beyond belief. And I just want more groups of boys to understand that they don't have to communicate, they don't have to be silent in their issues. It's not unmanly to do so. It's a basic human trait to have emotions. It's not anything to be scared of.
Jake, what would you say we talked about what your fears are. What are the challenges that you're facing on a regular basis?
I would say, even though I do communicate more when I'm feeling sad, it's still a challenge to do so. It's not as easy. It's still not easy to freely communicate. Sometimes it does take some effort. Before trying to talk about my depression, it felt like there was something in my throat trying to stop me from taking the words out. It's still there, but it's just a lot smaller. I would say other challenges is fighting off things that come with depression, like things like anxiety that can really try and hold you back from ever facing anything new and challenging because you want that level of comfort. Depression has also made me realize that I've got obsessive compulsive disorder, a very mild case, but still a case in general. So trying to fight back that and all the things that I have to do in my routine, that's often very difficult. And just fighting back all the negative emotions that now I know are wrong now and controlling power, that's essentially quite a lot of the challenges that I have to face.
Jake, I lost a daughter to mental health, and she's not here today to share her story. She decided that she wouldn't want to continue living, and she took her life. What stopped you from going to those really dark places? Because I know that you put it on our interview questionnaire that you had those thoughts. So,
Mm.
you know, as a parent listening to you, I'm thinking, how does one individual fight and survive and another doesn't?
To be honest, I don't know. I don't really know how I fought it off. During second year of my university, it was it became the only thing I thought of, that I wanted to die. It was like an hourly thing. Everything that I thought would come back to that. It was like a cycle. It became the voice that I heard, and it was genuinely terrifying. I I honestly think that I was just lucky. I don't know how to combat it. It's To get that far is frightening, and I don't wish that on anyone. And when it was at its worst, it is so consuming. I honestly don't know what if there was anything, or it was just pure luck in a way, that I just didn't, or I wasn't that bad enough to do it. If you understand, if you know what I mean. Um, there are so many times where I thought about it and I planned it, but it never happened, despite the fact that for a long time that's what I wish would happen.
I'm so happy you're here, Jake.
Thank you.
How does that feel, hearing somebody tell you, I'm so happy that you're with us today? How are you hearing those words, and how are you resonating with that message?
Well, my heart really sunk, because to I'm a lot better now, but to think that one point in my life I could have died is quite it's scary. It really is scary. I remember one thing that I always think about, I can't get out of my head, is when I was in England and my whole family was there, and me and my sister were just joking around, as you do, and she did like a pretend scream, going like Jake, like that, you know and my mum ran up the stairs, and she looked terrified, and we both were confused why she looked so terrified. And she got very angry and went, "Oh my God, don't scream like that again. I thought you just found Jake dead." And initially I sort of laughed it off, but really thinking about those words and what she said, that I almost couldn't comprehend that's what my mum was thinking at the time, that scream could have meant. That's how far I had come, in a way. So that sort of story really puts into perspective for me how much influence mental health has over your life. It has everything over your life. And like, when I hear people who unfortunately have lost that battle, it breaks my heart. Especially when I heard about Daniel, it really did, because it's not fair that that depression can have so much effect on someone, and to know that I narrowly escaped it, I don't think's fair. when there are so many other amazing people out there who have the right to still make impacts on the world and deserve to, but because they felt slow that they couldn't, and it's just, it isn't fair, and there's too many lives have been lost. I don't know how many have to go before people take it seriously enough.
What do you wish now that you've come to an understanding that your mental health is going to be something that you focus on for your life? You know, when you look now at your journey and you look at how far you've come and you see how important this is, what's different about Jake?
I think I'm a lot more understanding and sympathetic to other people and their emotions. I always thought I cared about how people felt, but not as much now when I know how much impact feelings, just something like emotion that everyone has, can have over one person. Correction, over millions of people. You know, I don't like the fact that so many other people out there have felt like I have. And I don't like the fact that the only reason that I'm here today is because I was fortunate enough that my parents could essentially pay for private therapy. There's a real big problem in England that the mental health is not funded enough. And I tried to get therapy with, and I think therapy is one of the most important tools of dealing with mental health. I tried to get it for 2 years, and I was essentially abandoned 3 times. And I went to A&E once thinking I was going to do something, and they just shooed me away like I was nothing. The only reason I'm still alive today is because I was fortunate enough to understand how I was feeling, and I had parents who understood and were like, we'll do this for you, we will pay. So I think there are so many kids, young adults, elderly people out there who aren't as fortunate financially as me to get this support, to understand what they're going through. To me, that is frightening, that I've had a chance to live and they possibly haven't, because of their upbringing and their society, which isn't their fault. It's just luck how we get onto this world and what world we'll live on and how our lives turn out. It's all just luck. So I just want to try and impact the world enough to make it possible that people can get the support they need no matter what background they have.
Are you able to maintain a healthy relationship since being diagnosed with mental health and depression?
Um, I would say yes. I think it's difficult for, I've had relationship with people post being diagnosed, one who's had mental health issues and one that hasn't. And they've both been equally as understanding and as sympathetic to my mental health. And that could attribute to the fact that that women and they're more understanding and sympathetic about emotions. It is difficult. It is difficult because you need to take the time to focus on your own happiness sometimes. And for me, I like to focus on the other person's happiness more, and that can be harmful. And the fact that I'm letting myself get low because I care about someone else more. So it's really important about, and I think even if you didn't have depression, it's really important to find the balance. And I think I still think that depression should be taken just like a physical illness. If your boyfriend or girlfriend has broken their arm, you're going to tend to it. If they've broken their leg for a year, you're going to work around it. You're going to not sit that certain way, not sleep that certain way. You're going to change your diet. You're going to sleep a different pattern. But why is there so much stigma around just because you're feeling, because of sadness, that somehow it's more difficult? Yes, some scenarios it can be more difficult, but there's nothing that you can't work around as two people who understand each other. And I just think, just as you would in a relationship, you would start watching rugby to appease your boyfriend or girlfriend, for example, because you know that they like it or you know that they care about it. It shouldn't be as difficult. Well, it shouldn't be not as difficult, but it should be as, you should as well educate yourself on what they think and their mental health is, no matter what sort of thing they have, whether it's depression, schizophrenia, OCD, anxiety, BPD, anything.
Jake, I can't even express in words how special today's interview is for me, watching you. And I'm watching this amazing young man in front of me with so much wisdom, and cannot believe that we almost lost him. And I'm so happy you're here, Jake. I really am. And
Thank you. That means a lot, Maria.
And I know that Daniel would be ever so proud of you for taking a personal challenge in a world where it's really hard to be you without wearing a mask. And here you are creating a platform to support other people. It's just so inspiring, Jake. And I hope that when we do speak again, that you are feeling as inspired by you as we feel watching you. Jake, it's such an honor. It's just, I could talk to you forever, and I know that we have to bring the interview officially to an end. I know why I wanted you with us here today. Why do you want to be on Strong?
Well, Maria, I have wanted to say at some point, after finding out what happened, the way that you've gone about with Strong and all the fantastic things you do, it is the most admirable thing I think anyone in your situation could do. And really, I wanted to come on to tell you how amazing that what you're doing is. And I wanted to do it not just to help the audience, but just to help you in your Strong journey, because I can't imagine how difficult things have been, but to go about it how you're doing and wanting to help people shows that there are some amazing people out there, and you are one of those. And I just think Strong is, I've been watching some of the episodes, and it's really incredible and so admirable, and I wanted to help you in whatever way I can with this, because it is amazing. It's so much. You have no idea how supportive it is to people who can't comprehend what they're thinking, and seeing other people talk of different ages and backgrounds and their experiences. Even if I think you probably agree with this too. Even if one person, his life has changed, you know it's worth it. So that's really why I wanted to come on. I just wanted to come on to help you in this amazing adventure that you're doing, and I know that everyone is so proud of you for doing it.
Thank you, Jake. That means a lot. You know, I think sometimes life hits you and it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
And sometimes helping others is probably the best process to heal. At
definitely.
least it is for me. It's just so wonderful to have you here, Jake. And I am so excited for any young man, any young woman watching this today. And I believe that with people like you in the world, there is so much support out there to help everybody. And we will have to bring this right to an end. Thank you so much. I feel overwhelmed with emotion watching you, Jake, and I know that your parents are so proud of you. But anyone watching this for the first time, I'm so happy you chose today, because episodes like this are important on so many levels. But the most important level for me is that you realize whatever you're going through, there's somebody to talk to, whether it's a friend, a family member, a therapist, or maybe even a stranger. Don't believe what your mind is telling you. If those thoughts are telling you that you're not worth it, or that you don't matter, or that you don't count. I may not be a counselor, I may not be a therapist, but what I do know is if you're watching this today, I hope that you reach out to me, to Jake, to anybody. Don't suffer in silence. And that brings us to the end of another tremendously amazing episode. Thank you all for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all again next week when we meet another wonderful guest, just like Jake. Thank you for watching, everybody.
I know everything will be alright. The colors will come back again. And there's highs